It started with the overdue notice, which was strange because I never check out physical books anymore. Like everyone else, I'd switched to digital years ago. My apartment in Belltown is small, and books take up space. But the email from the Seattle Public Library was insistent. Asterisk the stranger beside me asterisk buy and rule was 3 weeks overdue. A $12.80 fine was accruing. The problem was I'd never checked out that book. I'm a true crime fan, sure, but in Rule's Ted Bundy deep dive? That felt a little too on the nose, even for me. I figured it was a system glitch. A misscanned barcode. It would be a quick trip to the Central Library downtown to sort it out. That's where Maya came in. Maya was I don't know what we were. We'd been on 3 dates. She was a graphic designer with a studio in Pioneer Square, and she had this effortless cool that made me feel both enthralled and slightly clumsy. That day she was meeting me for coffee after I dealt with the library. She texted me as I was walking up the sloped, red-painted floor of the main lobby. Asterisk running a few minutes late. Client call ran over. Want me to just meet you inside? It's a zoo out here. Asterisk I texted back a thumbs up and pushed through the heavy glass doors into the controlled chaos of the library's main floor. The place is an architectural marvel, all angles and glass and soaring spaces, but that day it just felt loud and confusing. I needed to find the circulation desk. I saw her before she saw me. She was standing near the information kiosk, looking up at the dizzying levels of the book spiral, her phone held loosely in one hand. She was wearing a simple black t-shirt and dark-washed jeans that were tight around her hips and thighs, hugging the curve of her ass in a way that made my throat feel dry. Her brown hair was down, falling in soft waves around her shoulders, and when she turned and saw me, her face broke into a smile that hit me right in the gut. Her lips were glossy, a pale pink, and her cheekbones were sharp enough to cast subtle shadows. "Hey you," she said, her voice cutting through the ambient noise. She leaned in for a quick, one-armed hug, and I caught the scent of her perfume. Something clean and citrusy, with a hint of vanilla. My hand on her back, felt the warmth of her skin through the thin cotton of her shirt. I had the sudden, inappropriate urge to slide my hand lower, to rest it on the swell of her hip. "Hey, client call okay?" I asked, pulling away a little too quickly. Same old, same old. They want the logo to be more dynamic but also more classic. So, the usual. She rolled her eyes, a gesture that was both playful and deeply attractive. "So what's the book drama?" I explained the email as we wove through the crowds toward the circulation desk. The line was long, snaking past the new releases. I was distracted, my eyes constantly flicking back to her. The way her jeans tightened across the front of her thighs as she shifted her weight. The delicate silver chain around her ankle, peeking out above her simple white sneakers. I was supposed to be annoyed about this library mix-up, but with her here, it felt like an adventure. When we finally got to the desk, the librarian, a tired-looking woman named Brenda according to her name tag, typed my name into her system. "Jonathan Miller?" she confirmed. I nodded. "Yes, here it is. Asterisk the stranger beside me star. Checked out on the 14th. It's been auto-renewed twice, but it's now 3 weeks past its final due date." "But I didn't check it out," I insisted. "I haven't been here in months." Brenda gave me the patient, slightly condescending smile of someone who has heard every excuse. "Sometimes spouses or roommates. I live alone." "Well," she said, clicking her mouse, "the book is still out. You're responsible for the fine until it's returned. You can pay the fine now or return the book and the fine will be cleared." "But I don't have the book," I said, frustration creeping into my voice. Maya put a hand on my arm. Her touch was electric, a small jolt that momentarily short-circuited my anger. "Is there anything you can do?" she asked Brenda, her voice sweet and reasonable. "Maybe someone else used his card?" Brenda sighed. "Without a police report for a stolen card, there's not much I can do. Your best bet is to just return the book. The automated return is right over there." She pointed a finger towards a wall of metal bins near the 4th Avenue entrance. "It's open 24/7. Just drop it in the slot. The system will check it in and clear the fine automatically." Defeated, I thanked her and walked away, Maya trailing beside me. "This is so weird," I muttered. "Maybe you just forgot?" she suggested gently. "You were pretty hammered that night we went to the Unicorn." I shook my head. "I don't get that hammered. And even if I did, I wouldn't go to the library and check out a book about Ted Bundy. That's a next-level bad decision. We stopped in front of the automated return. It was a sleek, industrial-looking thing. A wall of dark, grated metal with a single illuminated slot about the size of a large book. A small digital screen above it glowed with the words, "Please return books here." It felt impersonal, almost menacing in its efficiency. "So what now?" Maya asked. "I guess I give up and pay the fine online," I said, running a hand through my hair. "It's not worth the—" I stopped. Something on the floor, right by the base of the return unit, caught my eye. It was a book. A worn mass-market paperback with a distinctive yellow cover. I bent down and picked it up. The stranger beside me. By and rule. A cold trickle, like a single drop of ice water, traced a path down my spine. I stared at the book in my hand. It was real. It was here. "No way," Maya breathed, leaning closer to look, her shoulder pressed against mine. I could feel the solid warmth of her. "Is that it?" "Yeah," I said, my voice hoarse. "This is it." "Well, problem solved, right?" she said, her tone brightening. "Just drop it in and we can go get that coffee." It should have been that simple. But it wasn't. The coincidence was too perfect. The book I was falsely accused of having, the book I needed to return, was just waiting for me? On the floor? It felt staged. It felt like a trap. Hesitantly, I flipped the book open. The pages were musty, the spine cracked in multiple places. It had been well read. And then I saw it. A single page, about a third of the way through, was dog-eared. The corner was folded down hard, creating a sharp, permanent-looking crease. "Someone dog-eared a page," I said, more to myself than to her. "Monsters." "Huh. Nothing." I unfolded the corner. It was page 87. The text described Bundy's charming, normal facade, how he could be the boy next door, the man you'd trust to help you load groceries into your car. The stranger beside you. I shuddered and closed the book. "Just drop it in, John," Maya urged, a slight impatience in her voice now. "Let's go." I slid the book into the metal slot. It vanished with a soft, mechanical whir. The screen above the slot flickered, the words changing to "Thank you for your return." A moment later, a receipt printed from a slot below. I tore it off. It was a standard library receipt. The stranger beside me. By and rule, returned, fine cleared. "See," Maya said, linking her arm through mine, her breast pressed softly against my bicep, and another wave of that distracting warmth washed over me. "All done. Let's get out of this madhouse." I let her lead me away, but I couldn't shake the feeling. I looked back at the return slot once, twice. It sat there, dark and silent, like a mouth that had just been fed. The next email came 2 days later. Helter Skelter by Vincent Bugliosi. 2 weeks overdue. A cold knot tightened in my stomach. I was at my desk in my apartment, the morning sun glinting off the Space Needle in the distance. This wasn't a mistake. This was something else. I called the library. I was put on hold for 20 minutes, transferred 3 times, and finally spoke to a supervisor who told me the same thing Brenda had. Without a police report, my account was responsible for the items checked out on it. I could place a block on my card, but the existing items still needed to be returned. I didn't tell Maya. I felt stupid, and a little scared. I went back to the library that evening after work. The place was quieter, the vast spaces feeling more cavernous than chaotic. I went straight to the automated return. My heart was thumping a dull, nervous rhythm against my ribs. I didn't know what I expected to find. Nothing, probably. Or maybe the book, just sitting there again. It wasn't there. A wave of relief, so potent it felt like intoxication, washed over me. It had been a fluke. A weird, one-time thing. Maybe some kid had found my library card and was playing a prank, and had gotten bored. I turned to leave, planning to just pay the fine and be done with it. And then I saw him. He was standing by the bank of public computers, maybe 30 feet away. He wasn't looking at a screen. He was looking directly at me. He was a tall, gaunt man, dressed in a dark, ill-fitting suit that looked like it belonged to another decade. His hair was a lank, greasy gray, combed over a balding scalp. His face was long and pale, with deep grooves running from his nose to the corners of his thin, colorless lips. But it was his eyes that held me. They were a flat, lifeless gray like dirty river ice, and they were fixed on me with an unnerving intensity. Our eyes locked for what felt like a full minute, though it was probably only a second or two. A jolt, like a static shock, went through me. There was no curiosity in his gaze, no friendliness, no hostility. It was just observation. Pure, blank observation. I quickly looked away, my face heating with a flush of irrational embarrassment, as if I'd been caught doing something wrong. When I glanced back a moment later, he was gone, vanished into the shadowy aisle between the computer carols. The encounter left me unsettled, but I wrote it off. Downtown Seattle had its share of characters. I went home, paid the fine for Helter Skelter Online, and tried to forget about it. I couldn't. That night, I had a nightmare that I was a kid again, maybe 8 years old, at the county fair. I'd gotten separated from my parents near the Ferris wheel. The world was a blur of screaming laughter and distorted carnival music. I was crying, turning in circles, calling for my mom. Then I saw him. The man from the library. He was standing by the ring toss game, holding a giant, garishly purple teddy bear. He wasn't looking at the game. He was looking at me. And he smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile. It was a stretch of his thin lips that showed no teeth, a cruel, knowing gash in his pale face. I woke up gasping, my sheets damp with sweat. The memory was real. I had gotten lost at the fair. It had been one of the most terrifying experiences of my childhood. But the man wasn't part of that memory, was he? The next book was In Cold Blood by Truman Capote. This time, I didn't wait for the fine. I went to the library during my lunch break. The sky was a solid sheet of Seattle gray, and a fine misting rain was falling. I was hyper-aware of everyone around me, scanning faces, but I didn't see the gaunt man. I went to the return slot. My hands were trembling slightly. I didn't want to look, but I had to. I knelt down, pretending to tie my shoe, and there it was, asterisk in cold blood star. Sitting neatly, almost ceremoniously, on the floor directly in front of the metal slot. I snatched it up, my heart hammering. I flipped it open. Sure enough, a dog-eared page, page 112. I unfolded the crease. The paragraph described the moment the Clutter family's dog, tied up outside, began to whine after hearing the gunshots inside the house. A small, pathetic detail of a vast tragedy. A wave of nausea rolled through me. This wasn't random. The dog-eared pages, they weren't random either. Find what you're looking for? The voice was dry and raspy, like stones grinding together. I jerked upright, clutching the book to my chest like a shield. It was him. The gaunt man. He was standing so close I could smell him. A faint, dusty odor, like old paper and mothballs. His gray eyes were focused on the book in my hands. This was on the floor, I stammered, taking a step back. He nodded slowly, his head moving like a rusty puppet's. They often are, the ones that don't want to go back in. He gestured with a long, bony finger towards the return slot. His nails were yellowed and perfectly manicured. What do you mean? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. He didn't answer. Instead, he smiled, that same toothless, gash-like smile from my dream. You should read it, before you return it. It's the polite thing to do. He then turned and walked away, his footsteps making no sound on the hard library floor. I stood there, frozen, until he disappeared around a corner into the nonfiction section. My whole body was trembling. I looked down at the book in my hands. It felt heavy, contaminated. I didn't return it. I took it back to my office and shoved it into the bottom drawer of my desk. I spent the rest of the afternoon jumping at every sound, my skin crawling with the phantom sensation of his gaze. That night, I had a date with Maya. We went to a noisy ramen place in the International District. I was distracted, monosyllabic. You okay, John? She asked, slurping a noodle. You've been quiet all night. Yeah, fine, just work stuff. I forced a smile. My eyes dropped to the V-neck of her burgundy sweater. The soft skin of her chest was visible, rising and falling with her breath. A single delicate silver pendant rested in the hollow of her throat. I imagined unbuttoning my own shirt, pressing my chest against hers, feeling her heart beat against mine. The thought was a flare of heat in the cold dread that had taken root inside me. It was a desperate, primal impulse. You sure? She reached across the small table and put her hand over mine. Her fingers were warm. You seem a million miles away. I'm right here, I said, turning my hand over to intertwine my fingers with hers. Her touch was an anchor, but the storm inside me was too strong that I kept seeing the gaunt man's face, his smile. Later, walking her back to her studio, I pulled her into a doorway and kissed her. It wasn't a gentle kiss, it was hungry, frantic. I backed her against the cool brick wall, my hands on her hips, pulling her tight against me. I could feel the entire length of her body. She kissed me back, her mouth soft and willing, but after a moment she gently pushed me away. "Whoa, easy there," she said with a breathless laugh. "What's gotten into you?" "Sorry," I mumbled, resting my forehead against hers. I was breathing hard. "I just needed that." I walked home alone, the taste of her lip gloss still on my tongue, the memory of her body against mine, a temporary shield against the creeping fear. But the shield was fragile. The next book was The Devil in the White City by Eric Larson. I didn't get an email. I just knew it was a certainty, a cold stone of dread in my gut. I went to the library after dark. The mist had turned into a steady, cold rain. The library was nearly empty, a tomb of knowledge and silence. He was there. Of course he was there, standing in his usual spot by the computers, a silent sentinel. I didn't look at him. I walked straight to the return slot. The book was there. *The Devil in the White City*. I picked it up. My hands were steady now. A grim resignation had settled over me. I opened it. Page 56. Dog-eared. The page described H. Holmes's murder castle, the sound of a saw cutting through bone echoing in a soundproofed room. I didn't jump when the raspy voice spoke from directly behind my ear. I'd been expecting it. "He was an architect of nightmares," the man whispered. His dusty, papery smell filled my nostrils. "Just like you, Jonathan, you build them every night." I spun around. He was inches from me, his gray eyes were depthless. "Who are you?" I demanded, my voice cracking. "What do you want?" "I'm a librarian," he said simply. "I facilitate returns." His gaze drifted down to the book in my hand. "Some books are harder to return than others. They carry weight." "What is this?" I gestured with the book.